This is volume 27. This is how much they adapted, all the way up to this. This is how much they left out. This is a little sliver of what we saw in this episode of Berserk. This is volume 28. This was technically the whole episode right here. All of what I am holding right here is the whole episode on which they adapted within this episode. However, a lot of things were left out. And probably the most notable and also memorable part in this portion of Berserk, one that actually plays quite a bit of significance later on in, the series of Berserk, is the moonlit boy, or the child under the moonlight, however, sort of title you want to go with it. Anyway, this child is actually supposed to was supposed to appear in this episode of Berserk. This is the same exact time in which he plays his first role, and they didn't show him at all. Like, it's really hard not to say, why he plays such a significance later on without spoiling, so I'm really not going to do that just in case they do showcase him later on. However, why would they not show him in this episode, which he is supposed to appear, and then show him later down the line? Like, I don't really know where they're planning to go with this, but it just irks me that they left out a really memorable moment that was in the manga that really should have played a role in the anime, as it does carry on later down the line. And basically, what we missed here, you might think nothing of it. However, the moonlit child actually plays quite a bit of significance. I'm not gonna say, anything pertaining to the future, if they do show him or not, but I'm gonna tell you what sort of significance he plays in this sort of timeline that we are now in Berserk. So, basically, I'm just going to tell you what we should have seen from him in this episode. For one, this sort of significance with the moonlit boy can actually be said to possibly be Guts' reincarnated child. However, that is up to speculation, because many people actually in the Berserk fandom compare the moonlit child to the cursed child, the original fetus that Casca gave birth to, which was ultimately tainted by Griffith. And as we know, that child no longer exists, because that child's sole purpose was to bring about the rebirth of Griffith. So when it comes down to the cursed, boy and also the moonlit boy, they are in a way almost identical, but not exactly the same. They are two different entities. The second thing about this is that the moonlit child actually plays a role in the manga around this time into actually briefly reuniting Guts and Casca. Very, very briefly. And as we know, Casca has been very standoffish by Guts. Actually, it's almost as if she completely hates him, hates his guts. She completely views him as a different person. And as we know, as the viewer, we know what Casca and also Guts have been through. We know that. And we know what Guts has lost. And we know what Casca has lost. And seeing how this moonlit child actually reunites them to a certain extent, even if it's only briefly, it just showcases not only to the viewer, or the reader in this case, since, this part of the episode was left out, not only does it showcase to the reader, but also to Guts as well, that there's a family here, or what could have been a family. And that really hits home. That really does, and it sucks. And there is more that I can say about the moonlit boy. However, he is still kind of shrouded in mystery, but for the moment, I'm gonna stop what I say about him, you know, here for this video. If he pops up later down the line, I'll definitely talk about him more, but when it comes to the Moonlit boy, this is something that definitely should have been incorporated into the episode. It may not seem like it actually has an impact to the story, but in actuality, it has pretty great significance. Now, as for the rest of the adaptation goes, to be honest with you, I really did not like this episode. It just really felt like it was all over the place, especially due to the pacing, how certain things were left out, especially from last week's episode. I mean, we technically still had to get involvement with Princess Charlotte and also various other characters being introduced that will pop up later down the line, because, I mean, by the end of this episode, we get to the preview into which we are already in the city, in which we are going to see, you know, our group of characters finally get on the boat. That's all I'm gonna say. That's not really spoiling much, so, you know, I should be okay with that, okay? But the boat, we're already there. Really? Like, I believe we only have like an episode or two left of Berserk, and all I gotta say is that the pacing for this adaptation, I've stated it numerous times, even in the 2016 adaptation, the pacing is probably one of the worst problems, you know, besides the CGI when it comes to the adaptation. And it really, really does suck, because they are skipping out on some memorable and also very pivotal points. Some of them I could understand. However, stuff like this, it just kind of irks me as a fan, because I want to see this stuff animated. Even the Lost Children arc, you know, to a certain extent, I can actually see why they would skip that out, because, I mean, you are technically killing children in that arc. However, you know, at the same time, like, it just shows Guts' inner demons actually begin to rise before the Tower of Conviction. And just, man, look, I just wish we had a decent adaptation. Anyway, I'm sorry I lost my cool there for a minute. I'm trying not to complain. I'm really trying not to complain. It's just, as a fan, this is some of the stuff that I would like to see. And I know for a fact, judging by your guys' thoughts in the comments from my previous reviews, you all think the same. So, when it comes down to the overall presentation of this episode, personally, I did not really like it. I mean, we got to see a lot of fighting, which is mainly what they seem to care about most to showcase to the viewer. And while, don't get me wrong, I like my fighting and whatnot, I still want to see the characters interact with each other and actually bring forth dialogue to move around the plot, you know, a bit more. You know, there was quite a few things left out from the last episode, and also in this episode they left out the Moonlit child, and I know they were trying to show how Guts has become so, you know, demonic now, especially due to this armor. I mean, technically the only sort of progression with the dialogue that we actually got in this episode of Berserk was when the Skull Knight appears, which tells Guts that if he keeps on using the armor, he is ultimately going to end up hurting people who he cares about most, as he will no longer be able to control his feelings, his thoughts, or even his physical body. He will soon turn into a demon himself by using the armor and without really giving much thought into his actions. And when it came to the last battle with the scene with the big elephant looking sea monster looking like demon thing, like, that was probably the most cringiest part of the episode, because I couldn't stand the sight of that thing. I mean, it looked ugly as fuck in the manga, but holy shit, it looked ugly as fuck in the anime. I don't know, guys. What about you? What did you think about this overall presentation of Berserk? How do you feel about the stuff that has been skipped over? How do you feel about that we're almost closing in on the boat segment of the series of Berserk? Let me know your overall thoughts, because you already heard mine, and you're probably tired of hearing it by now, by the end of this review, because, I mean, more or less, this is just what I have been saying in, you know, the reviews of Berserk. But I mean, stuff like this, it doesn't seem to change, sadly. So I don't know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. Be sure to give this video a like if you enjoyed it. Hit that red subscribe button if you want to stick updates to my future content. I'll catch you all in the next one.